Today's episode is all about essays. Essays are one component of the college application process, and many colleges and even scholarship programs will require essays of their applicants. Essays might come with a specific prompt to answer, or it might be more up to the writer in terms of a more personal statement style. Determining what to write and how to write it can be a very stressful and intimidating process, especially for first gens. With so much on the line, meaning college admissions or earning a scholarship, there can be a lot of pressure to write that perfect college essay. Today, you'll hear from two first-generation students about their experiences with essays. One being a current high school student writing his essay, and the other being a current college student who wrote her essays 2 years ago. We hope today's episode helps to give our audience tips and lessons as they begin to write their essays. But without further ado, let's meet our first guest. We begin today's episode on college essays with a current high school senior, Finn. Hi, Finn. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing good. I'm so happy to be here today.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we're super excited to have you as well, and we're so excited for you to share your experiences with our audience. So, Finn, today we're here to talk about the college essay process and how that process is a part of the much larger college application process. But before we get started with that topic, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to our audience.
So, hello everybody. My name is Thin Huang. My pronouns are he/him/his, and I'm currently a rising senior at Clan Collins High School in Spring, Texas. I would be a first-generation college student, as both of my parents were Vietnamese immigrant refugees that dropped out during middle school to help support their families during the war.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And then, as you mentioned, you are a first-generation college student. And I'm curious, when did you first learn about that label or identity, and how did that make you feel?
At first, I didn't know what the label first generation student was until recently last year. I learned about it when I got introduced to this program called the Emerge Fellowship that recruited me to their program because I was a first generation college student. And it made me realize that a lot of students my age had parents that helped guided them to go to college while mine didn't know a lot about.
Right. And, I think that we don't realize how much of a resource the parents can be in the process. And so when they're unfamiliar with the process, that can seem like we're lacking resources. But I'm so glad that you have found other resources such as the Emerge program to help you through this college journey. So then you are starting your senior year of high school. And before we get started on the essays topic, heading into senior year, what are some of your post-high school options or goals that you have in mind for yourself in the future?
Currently, right now, I'm still undecided about what I wanted to major in, but I'm leaning a bit towards pre-med right now.
And what kind of has led you towards pre-med in the medical field?
A lot of it has been because of my Asian culture. A lot of them reinforce the idea of becoming a doctor because of how much money you make and the label behind it. But I feel that being a doctor is good because I help save people every day and it's a good career path.
Absolutely. And I will say that areas of medicine and healthcare are extremely stable, career markets. Lots of great employment opportunities. So that's really awesome that you want to navigate that path. Have you thought about specific colleges you might apply to? Have you even thought about what areas of the country you might apply to?
One of my top choices for colleges right now would be the University of Washington, WashU, because of their medical program over there.
I'm curious, you are located in Texas. How did you hear about WashU?
So my program manager for Emerge recommended me to WashU since I told her that I wanted to do pre-med. But also, I wanted to live somewhere far away from Texas to kind of move away from my parents and get some freedom. And my brother is also nearby in the area in Washington over there. So I would also get to meet him sometimes.
That's great to have that family connection nearby, and that's super, super exciting. So, wishing you best of luck on that application process. So, speaking of the application process, I feel like it's a cliche or it's a well-known common fact, but when a lot of students, when I ask them about college applications, one of the first things that they think about is that college essay. That's something that I think is really programmed in the minds of a lot of young people out there. But I'm curious, from your perspective, what role do you think essay writing will play in your college application experience?
I feel that college essays, the writing helps you tell your stories to the admission officers so that they can more understand you as well. But I feel that it shouldn't be that hard and you shouldn't stress too much about it because it's all from your point of view, all your story to tell. So it shouldn't be too stressful.
Absolutely, and I love that you bring up that note or thought of, for them to get to learn more about you. I think that's something that a lot of students forget about. Schools are not just assigning these essays for the heck of it. They're assigning them to help them learn more about their applicants. And you know, gone are the days of, believe it or not, in the past, like schools used to be able to put in your GPA and your test score and you were in or out. It was really cut and dry. But a lot of schools have added that essay to help to get to know the student because, you will experience this, but with college applications, it's a lot of boring stuff. It's a lot of, where do you live? What's your phone number? What high school do you go to? But that essay will allow you to really, truly tell your story. Have you worked on or thought about any essays during the summer before your senior year?
I'm still writing my essays right now, and my program manager is helping me out. But I wanted to apply to early decision to WashU as well, so I'm hoping to complete my essay by around September or October.
Yeah, an early decision is that deadline that's usually pretty early. There's the guaranteed or it's legally binding typically in terms of once you get in, you go there. Yeah, that's a great plan. And you mentioned that you've started writing them. How did you start to even think about preparing for the college essay? Talk about some of that preparation for that.
So at first, I got a little bit of help from my school and counselors, and then I asked my program manager from Emerge to gain ideas and brainstorm ideas for the personal statement. And I looked at previous examples from older upperclassmen to see what they wrote about and compared to my friends to see their progress as well.
And you mentioned that your school helped you. Did they have any, college essay writing built into their curriculum, like to English classes, or was it more like outside of the class?
It was more outside of the class, more general help from me asking the guidance counselors themselves instead of in the courses.
I'm curious. You're obviously applying to WashU. My guess is you might apply to some other schools as other options. But do you know within this process, are you going to have to write prompted essays, essays that have a specific prompt? Are you going to have to write personal statements, or do you think you'll have to write both?
I think I'll probably have to write both beforehand because there's the Common App, and then also whenever they ask specific questions that go into deeper detail as well.
Yeah, and the Common App is a great resource because they include the essay in their application. And what's nice is that for a rising senior like yourself, heading into senior year, you are able to know the prompts ahead of time. They typically announce them the year before. Speaking of personal statements, then can you describe for the audience, let's say there's another senior out there or maybe even a junior out there who is wondering, what is this personal statement that they keep referencing? Can you, in your own words, talk about what a personal statement is?
A personal statement is an essay that you write to the college admission counselor that they read, and they get a ton of essays from everybody around the state, the nation. And you want to write an essay for your personal statement that distinguishes yourself from everybody else and want them to admit you to their school. And the personal statement is pretty important for that because it sets you apart from others.
This is just an interesting question. Do you think you like writing the personal statement more, or do you think you'll enjoy writing the prompted essay, like the Common App essay, more?
Personally, I feel that I would probably like writing the personal statement more because it gives me more creativity and freedom to write what I want compared to the prompted essay where I have to follow a guideline.
So, before applying to college and writing those college essays, and before even immersing yourself in this process, I'm curious, just overall, when you think about college acceptance and college admissions, outside of the essay, what did you used to think colleges looked for mainly when they looked at applicants?
Before the college essays, I thought that mostly colleges looked about their class ranks and GPAs most of the time and what extracurricular activities they did. But I realized that the college essay is also really important because if you have a high rank and good GPA, but you have a bad essay that doesn't distinguish yourself compared to somebody with a lower rank and GPA than you that wrote a really good story, they would probably get accepted over you. And that mindset of mine changed a bit.
Yeah, there's so many pieces to the puzzle there. And, having done some mock admissions events in the past with certain colleges, I have heard of students not getting accepted for their essay. That is very real. And especially, then you're applying to Wash U, which is deemed a selective school. So the stakes are often high in that environment with each individual portion of the application. So, what kind of brought that awareness of the importance of the essay? You mentioned that your mindset changed, but do you remember kind of how you came to that change?
It was probably the Emerge program lecturing to me about writing the personal statement a lot because you need to have that balance between good grades, extracurricular activities, and your essay. And they wanted me to be balanced and good in each of them and not just focus on only my class and everything.
Yeah, and then on a personal note, you apply to Wash U. Do you think you might even be interested in honors college or some sort of maybe healthcare specific track? You mentioned the pre-med, but do you think you might look into those types of opportunities too?
Yeah, of course. I wanted to lean towards honors and medical classes more. Just try to take the hardest and most rigorous courses they offer there.
We often think about the college essay in terms of getting in, but then there's even another layer, right? So you get in, but did you get into the honors program or did you get into the honors college? So sometimes that essay can really even not only help you get in or out, but also help you reach certain goals that you have in mind for yourself. So something to kind of think about. Looking back at your experience with college essays, did you encounter any stress or pressure when writing your essays?
Once in a while, I encountered maybe author's block when writing essays, and I couldn't write, and I wondered, what do I write about to help me stand out to the admission officers? And to deal with it, I just went around asking counselors or my friends for advice and guidance of ideas or what to do.
Do you think there's benefits to kind of starting ahead of time and kind of getting it done or at least thinking about it early?
I think there's definitely benefits if you start earlier, especially during the summertime when you're free with not a lot of things to do. Whenever school starts again, you could focus on the schoolwork and maybe focus on extracurricular activities as well. And if you finish early, you have more time and freedom.
You mentioned that you did feel stress and pressure. You mentioned that you at times didn't know what to write about. But I'm curious, do you have any tips overall for especially first gen students who are applying to colleges and writing those college essays? What words of wisdom would you offer them?
So definitely mentioned like earlier, I would try to start as early as possible, probably during the summertime. And for your essay, I would ask maybe you could look up college essays and examples online, or you could ask older classmates that graduated and that had gone through the process before, and ask them if you could look over their essay to write about it.
Absolutely. Seeing some of those previous examples can be super helpful. This is kind of a side note on that. Um, as you mentioned, these essays, whether it's prompted or personal statement, they should be written and tailored to meet who you are, right? And to develop who you are. However, we know there are always people who try to shortcut things. And has your school or your counselor or your English teachers ever talked about or cautioned around plagiarism as it comes into the college essay process and making sure that you are submitting your work and not someone else's?
Definitely plagiarism is a major issue. At my school, the teachers and everything talk about it being terrible and you immediately get a zero on assignments for it, but they don't really relate it much to the college essays much. For the Emerge program that I went through this class that they offered for the college admission process, writing the essays, and they definitely talked a lot about how plagiarism would definitely ruin your chances at the school.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, even, with anything that you submit, it should be submitted by you about you. So even sometimes there's tricky situations where parents are completing applications for their students. We never want that to happen. We really want this to be student led and student owned. So I'm glad that your school has really emphasized that, even if they didn't relate it to the college process. And glad that Emerge also mentioned it and kind of talked about that as well. So continuing on, as a part of the college application process, do you see the college essay as benefiting applicants or hindering or hurting applicants?
I definitely feel that college essays are a benefit for applicants, especially as a first generation student over here. You have a lot more to talk about and share for your story compared to people over here, and it helps you distinguish yourself from others to the admission officers. You could tell your story about your struggles over in the country over here and the language barrier compared to how people that are born over here have the luxury of learning from a younger age in English compared to you.
You mentioned specifically how it could be a benefit to first gen students, and I'm curious, how did your first gen identity play a role in what you plan to write about for your college essays?
For my personal experience with my first gen identity, it has given me a lot more of a unique experience to talk about and share. For example, I have older parents who were refugees during the Vietnam War, and they don't understand the education system as well in America compared to other people, and they can't really help with school or the college application process and academics. So I go to friends or others for advice compared to that, and it gives me more to talk about the struggle over here compared to others.
You mentioned what you plan to write about. You mentioned how that first gen identity can be woven into the college essay writing process. But what do you think colleges want to hear from students through those essays? And has this changed over time? Did you think they wanted one thing last year and now you're like, oh, I've heard they don't?
So, with being a first generation student, they deal with a lot more behind the scenes about education, family problems, and financial instability. And the essay could give a lot more context and the circumstances that you're going through and enduring while growing up. And my view about the first generation essay, their essays hasn't really changed much over the past year.
Have you heard of any either super unique essay college prompts out there? Have you heard of any like super competitive colleges that have essay prompts?
When I applied for Yale's summer program, they had a question about who my favorite character was, and I felt that was pretty unique for a question applying there. Who my favorite character that I wanted to spend a day with was.
Yeah, sometimes schools will ask you a random question and they want to see how you think about it. So they might introduce a common concept like what is your favorite character and what that you would want to spend a day with, and then they'll see how you answer that and how you kind of view that. Then, as we close today, are there any other? You mentioned Emerge, you mentioned your school being super helpful. Have you worked with any sort of other resources, like online maybe, or have you found any other resources to be helpful as you begin to plan for this process?
I definitely feel that YouTube is a pretty helpful source. Watching the videos on there about guides for your personal statement and guidelines for it, as well as going to maybe your relatives that have gone to college before. I went to my cousin who's a cardiologist, and he talked about his personal statement about how he saw my grandma dying, and that inspired him to become a doctor. And that was really unique.
As we close today, is there anything that you wish you knew more about college essays or anything that's kind of unclear that you're hoping to learn more about as you participate in this process?
I wish I knew more about the structures of applying to for college essays. Should I be using more fancy grammatical words, or should I just keep it in my vocabulary and vernacular?
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Finn, for being a guest on today's podcast. We greatly appreciate you sharing your insight and your experiences, and we wish you the best of luck on your college journey.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me today.
We continue today's discussion on college essays with a current college student, Allison. Hi, Allison. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you. We're so excited to have you here today on our podcast to talk about college essays and your experience with that portion of the college application process. But before we get to that topic, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, guys. My name is Allison Cirillo, and I use the pronouns she and her. And I attended the Victor J. Andrew High School in Tinley Park, Illinois. And I was luckily the COVID class of 2020. And now I currently go to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, where I'm currently a sophomore in the Geese College of Business, studying finance and marketing. Some of the things that I'm involved in on campus is I'm heavily involved in the Alpha Kappa Psi Professional Business Fraternity, Society of Women in Business, and a new club on campus called Hedge. And just some of my family background, I'm actually the oldest of four girls, and my youngest sibling is actually 8 months old, which is pretty surprising for some people, especially since I'm a college student.
Awesome. And Allison, you are a first generation college student, and I love to always ask this of our guests. When did you realize you were a first gen student, and how did that identity make you feel?
So the funny thing is, I actually didn't learn that I was a first generation college student until my senior year when I actually met you, Mr. Daly, when you started working at Andrew High School as a college career specialist. And kind of after you gave that first speech to our entire 2020 class about next steps in college or your career is when I really realized that I was first generation. So I always thought that first generation college student was someone who had parents that never attended college at all. And I didn't think I fell into that category because my mom did attend a 2-year school. However, I did later realize that first gen means that you didn't have, neither of your parents attended a 4-year university, which means that I fell into that category. And kind of when I realized that I was a first generation college student, I was kind of surprised because I didn't realize that I kind of fell into that category, even though I didn't really know what to do anything with college at all. But after I found out, I kind of felt like a sigh of relief because I wasn't really alone. And I actually found out that a lot of other kids at my high school were first generation, and even that some of my friends were, which I didn't really realize that's how it was. But it kind of gave me just like a greater sense of community, especially like at Andrew High School, that I wasn't alone and that I had others to lean on, especially like you, Mr. Daly. I know that you helped me a lot, especially with getting to where I am today and just with my overall college goals.
Yeah, and I think that the process of going to a 4-year college is so different
Yes.
than that of going to a community college. And community colleges are phenomenal options. And
Yeah.
we've done episodes on community colleges, but it is such a different process. So Speaking of senior year of high school, let's take it back, which probably seems like maybe yesterday, but also not. But looking back at senior year of high school, do you remember when it came to like college and post high school, what were some of your goals that you had in mind or your plans for after high school initially?
I kind of started thinking about college like my junior year more so just because I knew that I didn't really know much about it compared to other people. So I like really had to do like more of my own research just because I would sometimes like ask my like parents to help me and my mom would be like, I have no idea, like I cannot help you on something like this. So really I started looking junior year and I knew that I wanted to study business, which is what I'm in right now. So I kind of just typed like randomly into Google, like top business schools like in the Midwest area. And the one school that really popped up was the U of I where I'm at right now because the Geese College of Business is like one of the top schools like in the country, like even compared to like Ivy Leagues and such like that. And as soon as I saw like that it was close to home and that the like business school was great, I immediately knew that that's like where I wanted to go, even at like the junior year level. So I kind of going into my senior year, it was really like U of I or bust for me. The only other places I really applied to was like Moraine Valley because it was either really U of I or just I was going to stay home for 2 years and hopefully transfer into U of I. That's how much I really was passionate about going here. So kind of just like my goals. So my junior year, I really focused on like business oriented like clubs and just making sure that I was like adding things to like my resume that I could ultimately put on my application to make me a better candidate because ultimately I knew that like my long-term goal was that I wanted to make it to U of I and I wanted to be in the Geese College of Business. And I'm so glad that I made it here. When I found out that I got into the school, I was on cloud nine, that's for sure. So
When you look back at your senior year, so after you begin to plan and kind of determine where you were going to apply, that natural next step is actually doing the application.
mhm.
And, part of the application process at most schools includes some sort of written sample, an essay or a personal statement. When it comes to the essay, how did you prepare or plan to write the essay?
So I actually wrote my essays in chunks. I didn't really just sit down and crank it out like in a couple hours in one sitting. I started my essays early because I knew that I wanted to apply to early application because that's usually like the November 1st deadline. And so it's like literally the day that applications came out, which I think was like early September. I started my application like that day, and I just immediately started writing my essay because I knew that I wanted to have multiple drafts and to make sure that I had time to reach out to those to help me like get edits and just make sure that my grammar was perfect, make sure that the topics that I was like touching on were really like personal and just like really like portrayed who I am and like what I'm passionate about and just overall like why I wanted to attend the school, which is ultimately the main subject of most college essays is they want to know more about you. They want to know like what you're passionate about. They want to hear about your experiences, what makes you unique from other candidates and just ultimately why you want to attend their school.
Yeah, and for writing the essays, did you ever like get assistance like with from teachers? Like was it built into the curriculum?
Yes, I did. So in my AP literature class, senior year, in like kind of during the time of like college application process, we did like an assignment that we had to do was write a college essay, and we had to get peer review edits from our classmates. So that kind of just really helped me, especially because the deadline was at least like a month before the actual deadline of the college applications. So even after I turned in my assignment, got my teacher to read it and several of my peers, I was still able to have time to make more edits if I wanted to. So kind of that was just like really helpful to me, especially because I know lots of students like to procrastinate. So it's not really ideal to wait to the last minute to turn in your essay or to start writing it the week before because college is a big step. It's either 2 years or 4 years, and you want to make sure that you have the most opportunities that you can, and you just want to make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward, whether it's in like your overall application or even it's at the essay itself.
I love the concept of peer editing. I think it's always great to get feedback from your peers. Our previous guest mentioned he was able to review past student essays, like previous graduates, which he found helpful. Obviously, everyone's writing their own essay, but it was nice to kind of see strategies that people used in their essays and the types of things they wrote about and how they wrote about them. And then, with college essays, there's a lot of different college essays out there. Sometimes there's specific essay questions that have a prompt. That is the tell us about a time you overcame an obstacle, something like that. But then there's also personal statements. And a lot of colleges will say, provide a personal statement. And, sometimes the colleges don't even tell you what they're typically looking for in that personal statement. But the personal statement, as we've kind of already discussed in the previous guest, is a way for that student to kind of write about themselves in their own way. Did you have experience with writing more of like the specific prompt essays, or did you have opportunities to also do personal statements, or did you write kind of a mix of both?
So I actually wrote like kind of a mix of both. I remember when applying to U of I, they had a prompted essay and their question was very straightforward. And I remember even attending an event for U of I for college applications. And I remember the recruiter telling me and telling like my class that it's really important that if you have a prompted essay to not like waver on more of the personal statement side, but to really like answer the essay question that they're asking you clearly. And I remember the essay question that I really focused on the most was really like why I wanted to study business and kind of the things and experiences that I had in either high school or like any time in my life that I really like focused in on that. But kind of going off of that, I also had to do like personal statements, which was really difficult for me to write actually, because there's so much that you do like within your life and there's so many experiences that it's kind of hard to pick and choose which ones you really want to highlight and which ones like really make you stand out. And I think it's like the most important thing about a personal statement is making sure that you're writing like about yourself and that you're not trying to not be someone who you're not, because someone who's reading it, they can see that. They want to know who you are and they want to know like what you're passionate about.
I loved a few things that you mentioned there. One being that, you actually remembered advice from the college rep. I always tell students, get to know those college reps because they're the people that are going to read your essays. And then also I love the angle you talked about in terms of authenticity, being yourself, not trying to be someone you're not. Thanks so much for sharing that. Looking back at your time with college essays, I'm curious, did you ever experience any sort of stress or anxiety around writing that college essay?
Yes, I did. I've experienced quite a bit of stress just because for me specifically, I really was only focused on one specific essay, which was the essay for U of I, because that's ultimately like this number one school that I wanted to go to. So a lot of times I would be overthinking like, oh, is this like good enough? I don't really know what I'm gonna do if I don't get accepted. So kind of just some of the things that I kind of took a step back to think about like what I did throughout my high school experience to kind of shape myself into being like the best possible like student that U of I would want to be at their school. So whenever I would feel like overwhelmed, I would always kind of how I deal with stress is I like to listen to music. So I did that frequently while I'd be listening to music while I'd be writing my essay, or sometimes I would even take like small breaks and I'd go for just like walks around my block or walks with my dog to kind of just step away from the computer, because if you are just staring at your computer for hours trying to write this essay, the words are going to start to jumble together. So I really this is what I did, and I encourage for other people to do is to, especially if you start early and you have the time to take breaks, take those breaks, come back to them, really think about what you're writing. And even sometimes I would go to Starbucks frequently with my best friend, and we would actually write our essays together, which was kind of nice because we would still be able to like socialize, but we would be getting our work done. And it was really just a good environment to really like write an essay, especially one that's like more so about yourself, which can sometimes be the most difficult topic to write about.
And Allison, did you ever apply? I'm sure you applied obviously for scholarships, but did you ever have to like write essays for scholarships?
Yeah, so funny enough, I actually applied to more scholarships than I did actual college applications, just because I'm more like my family is more like we don't really have the financial like money for me to like attend school, so it was really like important for me to have scholarships in order to actually like go to college. So that's why I focused really much so like on the U of I application, but I also focused a lot on scholarships. So really like when scholarship season came around, I remember I had like a huge stack of just like packets of scholarships. All of the scholarships like that I applied to had essays, and whether it was like an essay prompt or even some of them had personal statements, which it's kind of convenient when applications and also like school applications and also scholarship applications have personal statements, because then you can kind of get away with only writing one and being able to submit that one personal statement to multiple things to kind of save you time, especially if you like are a student that is really in need of financial aid. So that's kind of where I had to like go from. And so that's why I just like really focused on the scholarship essays as well as like my U of I application.
Awesome. Do you think there's any difference between a scholarship essay and a college admissions essay?
Yes, so I feel that as like I went through the process that scholarship essays, they kind of focus more on like financial like need basis, more so like just like academics. So that's why when I would write my essays, I really like would focus in on like obviously I'd point out like my academics and like how I succeeded throughout my like high school experience, but then I really touched on kind of how having that like scholarship money that they like would offer me would really like benefit me and help me like be able to accomplish my goals at the university that I wanted to go to. And I think that kind of just really like stands out when you're writing a scholarship, because like a scholarship essay, because like you're listing your academics, but they want to see that like the money that they're going to award you is really going to like be able to help you like establish like your goals and be able to succeed when you like move on like past high school. And I think that's kind of like different than when you would write like a college admissions essay, because more so you're writing about like your previous experiences in like your academics or like your extracurricular involvements, more so than your financial need to go to that school. Because when you're writing like a college application, you don't really like write in your essay that you like need financial aid to go there. You more so write like why you want to go there and like your goals and what you want to accomplish when you get there.
You talked about some of the things that you've had to write about and some of the different directions you've gone in. But as we've mentioned, you are a first generation college student. And I'm curious, how did your first generation identity play a role in what you wrote about for your essays, be it college or scholarship?
So I did mention in my college application that I was a first generation college student, because especially more specifically when I was like writing about the U of I essay prompt about why I wanted to go into business, something that I like really like tied into besides like the extracurricular like business clubs I was in, but I really kind of like hit home and talked about how I wanted to do business because of all the opportunities that there is, and just kind of how it's kind of more of a stable job compared to other like majors, and how it was really important to me because of like kind of how I grew up in my family life, that I wanted to be able to have a stable like a stable paying job to be able to provide to my family. And that was kind of just really important to me to like talk about. And I'm glad that I mentioned that I was first generation, because not everyone falls into that category. And I kind of recommend mentioning it in your essay, but not overusing it, because a lot of people are first generation college students, surprisingly, even though a lot of us think that we're not. But I wouldn't talk about it. I wouldn't recommend talking about it too much. It kind of just depends on your situation. For me, I only mentioned it briefly because I like my mom did attend like a 2-year school, so even though I am like first generation, I didn't feel that it was the biggest like identity that I wanted to touch on in my essay, but it definitely does help you talking about it, because not everyone is like that, and not everyone is at that disadvantage. So it's really key to point that out in your college essays, because like colleges recognize that you are at that disadvantage, and that even you going to apply for the school is like a big step like within your family. Like it's scary to go to college, and especially if you don't have like that background, or you don't really have like your parents to lean on to like help you, or like tell you like, oh, like this is what you need to do, this is what you should do when you get there. And I think colleges just really recognize that this is like a big step, not only like for yourself and your like your career with like education, and also like your professional like goals, but it's also like a huge stepping stone like for your family as well.
To close, do you have any specific tips? And you've already mentioned some, but do you have any tips for specifically for first generation students who, might be applying to schools this year and writing those college essays? What sort of advice or words of wisdom would you offer them in terms of writing those essays?
In addition to like the tips I gave earlier, like being yourself and like starting early and not procrastinating, but kind of just like a big key tip that I would want to give is that like as a first generation college student, you're kind of like put into that category of like unknown and not really as much knowing about college. So I really would capitalize on telling like first generation college students to really do their research, and to really spend time understanding not even just the college application process or the essay, but really like truly understanding like what college is, and how like what school you choose will really like shape your future, and how you're not only just doing that for yourself, but it's also like a big accomplishment like for your family. So really take the time out of your day. Like you will have to work harder than those who have had parents or lots of family members who have gone to college, and it's really you should really like see that and recognize that if you want to put your best foot forward, you have to do that extra research, and you have to do that extra push to really like set yourself apart, and really just like do that for yourself, so that you can like give yourself the best opportunity to attend like the school of your dreams. Like kind of tying that back into me, like I knew that when I found out I was like first generation, it kind of like made sense to me that I didn't know everything that was going on, and I can kind of relate to other people with that are first generation with not knowing all about college. So that's why I really took the time to do my research and ask those around me who did know about it. So just don't be afraid to like reach out to either like your friends who might might have parents that could help you, or even like your teachers, or if you have like a college career specialist at your school like my school did, just to really like reach out and use your resources, because it might be scary to use them, but they're there for you, and they will help you in ways that you will not even imagine until you're sitting here like where I am today, and you're just like so grateful that you had those resources to help you like accomplish like your goals in life, especially in college.
Well, thank you again, Allison, for being here. So much great advice that you had to share. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your experiences as a first-gen student. We greatly appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks again to today's guests, Thin and Allison, for sharing their stories and experiences with our audience. And thank you for tuning in to How to College for First Gens. As you may have learned from today's episode, college essays matter a lot when it comes to the college admissions process, and even with earning scholarships. And there's many things you can do to put your best foot forward. Our guests offered so much great advice, from planning early and planning ahead, to being creative and making it your own, speaking authentically, and always making sure at the end of the day that you are answering the question that the essay asks. The college essay is used in the college application process to help get to know the applicant better. Stay tuned for next week's episode, where we interview a post-college graduate who currently works as a college admissions counselor. She will speak to what colleges look for specifically from applicants in college essays. As always, you can find us online at howtocollegefirstgen.org if you have any questions or feedback, as we want to hear what you think, what you're struggling with, and how we can help. If you prefer to reach us on social media, you can find us at howtocollegefirstgen on Instagram and Facebook, and at HTC First Gen on Twitter. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Until next time.